the bottom of the sea. I'm at the bottom of the ocean. Don't know if I'll make it back home.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the DFS Super Show. I'm joined by Adam later on soccer. Looking forward to that. I'm going to be covering the WNBA as always. A nice 4-game slate upon us tomorrow, a big 5K to first GPP. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. Lots of injury news as always, some suspensions, lots of stuff to talk about. If you guys have any questions and you're listening or watching live, go ahead and drop those in the chat on the right side. If you're on demand, listen to it here later on in the evening. Jump into our Discord, ask questions there if you want. As I said, Adam will be jumping on later to cover some soccer stuff, which I'm really excited about. Get you guys more in tune with that soccer stuff because he's dropping a lot of winning lineup stuff in the Discord, and he's crushing it all through this Copa event. So big time stuff for him, and with more soccer stuff this weekend, you definitely want to be in tune for that. All right. First game I want to talk about here, Atlanta versus Connecticut. This is going to be a really interesting game. Atlanta has been the talk of the town on Twitter right now. There was a quarrel, if you will, between Kennedy Carter and Courtney Williams, the two best players on the team. Kennedy's been having some problems with the coach. Playing time has been lacking. She kind of lashed out. Courtney Williams kind of told her to, cool out. You're a second-year player. Chill. Apparently, she took a swing at her in the locker room, and now she is suspended until further notice. We know that the Olympic break is coming up. We have 3 more slates, so they'll be off for a month. There is talk about her potentially being traded. She was the former number 4 pick. You don't just trade a player like that for nothing. So there'll be some stuff going on during this Olympic break, but she will not be playing at all for these next 2 games before the break. That's going to give us some big value, though. We know Courtney Williams at 10-2. She's one of the best players on the team, consistently putting up 40-plus fantasy points, so expect her shot totals to continue to sail past 18 to 20. Carter was taking roughly 8 to 9 shots per game. With Tiffany Hayes still out with an injury, Williams is going to be taking 20-plus. So 10.2. Her right now, the early projected ownership on her is below 10%. That'll change probably tomorrow a little bit with this news coming out, but she's typically pretty low owned. And we get her a nice leverage spot to put people like Brianna Stewart, who's always heavily owned, Sylvia Fowle, some of the other players we're going to talk about. Dropping down a little bit, Crystal Bradford is there at 8-1. That's a little higher than we're used to paying for her. She's been over 5K for most of the season, between 5 and 6. But you see 3 straight games over 25 minutes. She has a 41 and a 30 in there. She kind of came back down to earth against Vegas, had a very rough game, only 16.5 fantasy points, but she did play a season-high 31 minutes. So with Kennedy Carter still out, expect her to continue to play 30 minutes in a starting role. She was another one of those players that had some issues with Carter. So the team is uniformed in their disdain for Carter, unfortunately, but we won't see any problems with the team when they're playing without her. So that's a good thing with such a tough matchup against Connecticut. Odyssey Sims will probably jump into the starting lineup again. She's there at 7-7, a pretty interesting play. In the starting lineups, previous times when she's played over 30 minutes, she's averaged right around 24.5 fantasy points. You see that last game against Vegas in a tough loss. She took 10 shots and had 34 fantasy points with 10 points, 13 assists, which was a career high for her. So I think people will probably chase that. I'm fine with her, but I think I would rather go with a Bradford or Courtney Williams instead if I had the salary. And then the forwards, we know the forwards are going to continually be tough to call for the Dream. One game it's Cheyenne Parker, one game it's Mo Billings, then it's Tiana Hawkins. So it's really difficult to play any of them. If I had to choose one, I do like Liz Willie at 6'1". She's been consistently the player that I do like, but you look at her logs there, she's had 4 straight games under 13 fantasy points. So pretty tough to really, highlight her as a play. But at 6'1", you only really need, 18 to 20, which is definitely capable, especially with Carter out and that usage opening up. The minutes are going to open up for her, and they're probably going to run a bigger lineup because they're down a guard now. Other players to look at, Arie Mcdonald at 4'2". They want to give her, a couple more looks here. The rookie that they drafted in the top 5. She's the heir apparent if Carter doesn't work out. Earlier this season, she had a couple of games where she scored over 20 fantasy points against Minnesota when she played over 20 minutes. She's a big-time three-point shooter. She's a capable scorer. She's not going to give you much in terms of peripheral stats, assists, blocks, rebounds, that kind of thing. But she is a capable scorer. So at 4'2", if you're going to hit this, 5K to first GPP on DraftKings and run, 10, 15, 20 lineups, getting some Arie Mcdonald exposure makes a lot of sense. Another thing, we like our revenge narratives in WNBA. Typically, they work out a lot. If it's a revenge narrative against their former team, a birthday narrative, any of these myriad of things. Courtney Williams is playing her former team, Connecticut Sun. You guys may remember, those that you followed WNBA religiously, 2 years ago when the Sun made their finals, run, and they lost to the Mystics. Courtney was on that team, part of their big 4 there, which still includes Jasmine Thomas, Jean-Claude Jones, and obviously they have DeWanna Bonner now. So Williams had an unceremonious divorce with Connecticut. She had some locker room issues with one of their former players. So she's going to be looking to, kind of show out and let them know, hey, you guys got rid of me. Here's what time it is. So we'll see. Like I said, the narratives in WNBA seem to work more than they don't. I'm a big narrative type of player, so I'm going to be on her, I think, a lot. Jean-Claude Jones is there at 10-9 on the Connecticut side. Right now, she's a lock for MVP, I think. She went over to Eurobasket. She was averaging 28 real points, 15 rebounds. She comes back over to the WNBA, drops, 2 straight 50-point performances. And 2 games that, were relative down games for her against the Fever. One was a close win, 86-80, where she had 35 fantasy points. And then a surprising loss, she had 34 fantasy points. So I feel like they didn't take it seriously against the Fever, and it cost them a game. But you see, she still took 17 shots in that loss. She had 16 points, 9 rebounds, 33 fantasy points. If that's a down game, if that's your floor, you're well worth the 10-9. I think we'll see her bounce back here nicely. One thing about the Dream with their front court, they don't rebound well. They're on pace for historically the worst defense statistically in the history of the league. This is now year 25 in the WNBA. So the Dream's defense is on, like I said, statistically to be the worst. So we're going to see a lot of stats, a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, a lot of everything score for these girls. So Jean-Claude Jones at 10-9, well worth the salary. If you don't want to play a chalkier Jean-Claude Jones, DeWanna Bonner is there at 10K. She's got three out of her last 4. She's been over 30 fantasy points. She's typically low owned. I don't like using her too much because I like to use my value spots for guard, but she's always a good GPP play because of her low ownership. And then really anyone else on this team, Jasmine Thomas, Kalia Charles, and Natisha Heidemann, they're fine plays. But I'm going to focus really on Jean-Claude Bonner or Brianna Jones, who is a fringe MVP candidate. It's her first All-Star appearance this summer. She just got voted in. You see, she did really well last year when Jean-Claude Jones opted out. This year, Alyssa Thomas, their other star forward, was injured early on, can't play. So Brianna's really stepped up her game. She had a career year last year. She's having a career year this year. She's averaging 30 fantasy points. She's only been under 30 fantasy points 3 times in her past 11 games, which is really phenomenal. Playing big minutes, averaging over 35 minutes a game in her last 5, which is huge. And she's averaging right over around 7 rebounds during that stretch as well. So the one game against Indiana, she had 34 and 7 at 47 fantasy points. So it really shows you her upside. If the Dream defense really focuses on Jonquel, they double, triple. Brianna's going to be out there doing some things. So at 9.5, she makes sense of a leverage play off of Jonquel. Moving over to the New York Indiana game, the Fever, by far the worst team in the league. They have 2 wins. They just beat Connecticut somehow, as I mentioned. New York is an exciting team. They play at one of the fastest paces in the WNBA. They do have Sabrina Ionescu, who's one of the exciting players. Starting with a revenge narrative, as I like to start with, Benijah Laney. We know she was on the Dream last year, but she did play for the Fever early on in her career. They cut her for nothing, and now Laney is an all-star, fringe Olympian, big-time scorer. She's averaging 20 points, 4 rebounds per game. She paid us off a lot early on in this season on Prize Picks. A big-time scorer. So I really like her, 9.6. That's a fair price for her. She's averaging over 32 fantasy points per game. With Sabrina back from her ankle tendonitis, it's actually helped Laney a lot more, taking some of the defensive pressure off of her because you have to account for Sabrina. The only thing is it does take some of her other stats away in shots. You see that her statistical scoring went down a little bit. She's hovering right on 27, 28. Without Sabrina, she was up over 35. So there is a little bit of a downgrade there. And then Sammy Whitcomb is having a career year as well. I'm a Storm fan. She used to play for the Storm. She never played like this for the Storm. But you see, she put up a 47 last game. Her price is 9.4 now. She had a 54 3 games ago against Atlanta. So the upside is there for her. She's taken a ton of shots. She's actually had 3 games over 9 3-pointers out of her last 5. She's rebounding at a high clip. She's averaging career high 6 rebounds. And a career high in assists as well, over 3. So she's putting up big numbers, but I can't imagine ever paying 9.4 for her. I'm really curious what her ownership will end up being. The Fever, of course, are a team you want to target against always. They're very fantasy friendly. We know that. So I think she'll probably draw a little ownership, but we'll have to see what the projections say tomorrow when we have a little bit more information. As of right now, they're not out yet for New York, so we'll see. The rest of the players, Jasmine Jones at 6'3", she's playing really well. Off the bench, she's playing right around 20 to 25 minutes. She makes sense to GPP play, somebody who can get you 25 to 28. Rebecca Allen is going to be out still until after the Olympic break, and Natasha Howard as well. So that's 2 main players that play over 25 minutes a game out. So look for her to continue to play high-level minutes. Rashonda Gray re-signed with the team recently back on July 3rd, I believe. She's 2 games back with the Liberty. She's played 20 minutes a game in that stretch, scored over 20 fantasy points. She had a career high, at least for fantasy points, in her 26 last game. She's actually had over 20 in 3 of her last 4. One of those games was before she got cut the first time. She's on an end of rest of season contract. She's going to play big minutes with Rebecca Allen out. I really like her at 5'3". I would expect her to be heavily owned. Over on FanDuel, let's check her price there real quick. Over on FanDuel, she's 5'2", so she's a little bit more difficult to pay for when you have a player like Damiris Dantas, who I'll talk about in a second, at 4'4". But on DraftKings, expect her to be pretty highly owned. And as I said, chalk-wise, you guys know from listening to me and my write-ups and stuff, I'm a pretty big leverage player. But when chalk is good and it makes sense and it's a value chalk, I'll gladly eat it. So Rashonda Gray is somebody that I definitely want pieces of. Kylie Shook's priced out. And then the real question on this, Sabrina Ionescu, she's on a minutes cap right around 28 to 29 minutes per game. She's 8'8", which is the cheapest that she's been in a long time, dating back to last year. She had 13 and 12 last game against Dallas for 40 fantasy points, 3 of her last 4 over 30. So I think for GPPs, again, in this 5K to first GPP on DraftKings, if you want to run multiple lineups, getting some Sabrina Ionescu exposure makes a lot of sense. For Indiana, it just came out today that Betty Hittar, the unicorn, the 6'10", three-point shooting Betty Hittar, is back in Hungary to see her own doctor. She has an ailing injury that she's kind of been playing through, but the Indiana doctors apparently are inept, is what her people are saying, and she went back home. So they will not have her until after the Olympic break. That's going to be tough. They're already dealing with some injuries for Jessica Breland, who's playing through it. Tiara McCowan's playing through injuries, so they're all kind of beat up. This team is really beat up. They're playing New York, though. We know New York, the top DVP spot in the league, taking front court players against them. They give up a ton of rebounds, a lot of easy points. So Tiara McCowan makes a lot of sense for GPP at 8.6. Just know that you could get a 6, but you could get a 50. There's really a wide range of outcomes from her, which means she's not a playable in cash or single entry. But like I said, this DVP spot is one of the best in the league. The only other player I'd really look for on this team would probably be Kelsey Mitchell. I think 8K for her as a high volume shooter makes a lot of sense. She's not very efficient, but she's going to take 10 to 20 shots per game. See, there's 3 games ago against Dallas, she took 22. She's not going to give you much in terms of assists or rebounds, but she will score 20, real points, knock down a couple threes, 5-6 free throws. She's going to make 4x at this price. So I do like her for GPP as well. I think most people will probably ignore Indiana, and that's going to end up being a failure on the industry's part because of how bad New York's defense really is. Next game, Seattle versus Phoenix. This is going to be a good one. Brianna Stewart's 11-7. She's always chalk. The initial projections on her are already 57%. It's a 4-game slate. As I told you guys, every Brianna Stewart slate, she's one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league. But leverage-wise in these big field GPPs, it just makes way too much sense to fade her. When you have a 3 or 4 game slate and you're going to be looking at 60% ownership. Now, she put up a 50 last game against LA, and obviously, if you didn't have her, it made it tough. But 2 games before that at 60%, she had a 38 and a 29 and a 40. So, you can live with those numbers. And the number, statistically, she's going to be under 50 usually. She has to go up against Brittany Griner, who's one of the best bigs in the W. So it's not like it's going to be super easy for her to get rebounds. So this would be a good spot to potentially fade her. She is on the road. Jewel Lloyd's back. They're playing more of Ezzy Magabor. They just signed Najia Jones, so they have a lot going on. They're, kind of going into the Olympic break. They don't want to get injured, so I wouldn't be surprised to see her not play a full amount of minutes or see her hit under 40 just because of the defense of the Mercury. They played pretty inspired last game, too, speaking of the Mercury, without Diana Taurasi. So 11-7 is just a tough pill for me to swallow when you have all these other good options on the slate that we talked about, like Jean-Claude Jones for almost 1K cheaper. Jewel Lloyd's back. She came back last game, played 31 minutes, had 27 points. She's 9-3. She's always the good leverage pivot off of Stewie. If you want to bet that Stewie's going to be under 40, typically Lloyd's going to be the one that hits 40 instead. So I do like her at 9-3. And then you really got to ask yourself, okay, so bigs-wise, if Stewie's going to guard Griner, Turner's going to be on Russell. Magwagor's going to come in and play, 20 minutes off the bench. She does have 3 straight games over 17 fantasy points. She's 6'4". Ever since they cut Candice Dupree, they're playing Magwagor a ton. She's a really nice play. It's a little tough for me to justify 6'4" at 20 minutes. Looking at it on FanDuel, she's 4'8". A lot easier to play her there. I think you definitely want to get exposure because she's going to probably score 20+ against this Mercury squad. And then the rest of the team, and Katie Lou Samuelson's struggling right now, can't play her. Epiphany Prince is really only in play if Lloyd's hurt. She's not. Stu Bird's overpriced at 9K. And then Jordan Canada at 5'6" is a little bit overpriced as well. So it's really just the big 3 of Stewart, Lloyd, and Bird. Bird's overpriced right now. So I got my little buddy here, my little WNBA buddy. All right, so Phoenix Mercury. Brittany Griner, 10-4. She's underpriced. She was actually a little bit lower owned than I thought yesterday, considering it was a 3-gamer. She put up 60 against Vegas, 33-10. I think against Seattle, you could see her put up another 45 to 50 fantasy points. She, like I said, Taurasi's hurt right now. She didn't play. I wouldn't expect to see Taurasi play tomorrow as either. She's still okay. She's heading into the Olympic break. They're going to want to use her in the Olympics. So don't expect to see her play at all. That could change, but as of right now, I think we want to have Griner. And then they didn't, because the slate came out before the Taurasi news yesterday for this slate, Sophie Cunningham's price didn't go up. She's 3.8K. She was only 16% in some contests yesterday, so people didn't make that adjustment. She did play 38 minutes against Vegas. Granted, it went overtime. Had almost 30 fantasy points. So 3.8, expect her to probably be chalky because she will start if Taurasi's out. Typically she's known as a corner stander, but if you've been paying attention more this year, she's been rebounding more, getting steals, more involved in, passing in the offense and getting touches, especially with Bria Hartley out and Kia Nurse being, pretty ineffective. So Cunningham at 3.8, I don't really need to hard sell her to you. Just play her if she starts. Only other player I'd be looking at is maybe Skylar Diggins-Smith at 9.7. She has been super nuclear when Taurasi's been out this year. You see she's averaging over 32 fantasy points without her. With her, it's been under 28. But you see last game in overtime without Taurasi, she scored 43 again on 20 shot attempts. So good GPP play. Expect low ownership on her against the Storm. The Storm defense is nowhere near what it used to be. So I think this will be a high-scoring game. We could see both teams play into the 80s, 90s pretty easily with potential for overtime. So Griner and Cunningham are definitely going to be core. And then the last game on the slate, an hour and a half later, it's Minnesota versus Las Vegas. One DVP spot to highlight that the industry's a little behind on. We've been talking about it for a few weeks. It was definitely shown yesterday against Vegas when Griner put up 50. But lead bigs or elite rebounding bigs are hammering Vegas, despite having Aisha Wilson and Liz Cambridge, 2 of the better bigs in the league. Defensively, they've had a lot of lapses. So I love Sylvia Fowles and Nafisa Collar to have big games tomorrow. against this Vegas squad. The problem is they're both over 11K. You can't play both, especially if you're planning on playing Griner. Okay. Collier had a rough game yesterday. She did play 40 minutes, so she never came out the entire time. She took 11 shots, only had 24 fantasy points. She will not be under 40 again today. I can promise you that. The most of the industry will probably be on fouls because of the fact that she's been out over 30 fantasy points in 4 of her last 5. She's kind of more safer. She's a better rebounder than Collier. She can score at will in the paint. She'll definitely give Vegas a hard time, but I could see her and Cambridge kind of, possibly neutralizing each other or getting each other in foul trouble. So I just think Collier is going to be kind of under-owned and be that person you want to be targeting. Damiris Dantas 7-6 on DraftKings. Way too pricey there. She's 4-4 on FanDuel. She'll be in everybody's FanDuel lineup. FanDuel is very easy to make a lineup nowadays because you can get 3 or 4 people who are just free. So Dantas has been playing really well as DraftKings has changed her price. Play her over on FanDuel. Kayla Mcbride is only 7-8. Revenge narrative. She's playing against Vegas. You see, the first time earlier this year she played against Vegas, she had a rough game. She played 42 minutes, but she only made 3 of her 14 shots for 19 fantasy points. She has since rattled off 3 straight 30-plus performances, topped off by that game against Dallas last night where she scored 39.5, hit 2 of her 5 threes. She's actually made 11 of her last, 19 threes. So she's just scorching the nets right now. She's contributing on rebounds. She's averaging almost 4 rebounds during that stretch, 3.5 assists. So she's contributing in her peripheral stats, which is not something typical for her career. Only 7-8. That's really pretty cheap for her. So I could see, running her back with Collier in a little Minnesota stack and getting, 80-plus points from both of them. On the Vegas side, it's really tough. One game it'll be Kelsey Plum, one game it'll be Jackie Young, one game it'll be De'Arica Hamby. They just really take turns. All of them are going to score 20-plus roughly, and it's really, do you want to hit the ones that are going to get 40? A'ja Wilson feels a little underpriced at 10-7. She's coming off a 52 spot. She's had 40-plus fantasy points in 3 of her last 5. So I definitely like her. I could see her being, a little bit higher owned. I don't love the matchup against Minnesota just because Sylvia Fowles is pushing for Defensive Player of the Year right now. And that could be a tough spot. Last time she played Minnesota, however, she did score over 50. This was the game where I believe it went overtime and 4 different players all went over 50. Collier, Cambridge, A'ja Wilson, and Sylvia Fowles. So 4 bigs just, trashed the slate there. Even Cambridge went over 50. So even though it looks like a defensive battle on paper, just know in the past these 2 teams played to a high score and 4 or 5 of them all went over 50. So Cambridge is your best GPP spot, though, at 9-8. Anytime she goes under 10K, I love her. You see against Phoenix, she played 36 minutes, had almost 30 fantasy points. Typically, the last 3 games, she's been under 20. Whenever games blow out, they don't play her at all. They want to rest her. If she's going to play 35 or 36 minutes against Minnesota, you'll definitely want to have her in some of your lineups because she's going to put up 40-plus pretty easily. I'm confident in that. And then as far as the guards go, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, I would probably only play Jackie Young because she's 7-8, cheapest of the 3. Rock solid floor of 20 fantasy points right now with upside for more. Coming off a game against LA, she had 39.5. Last time against Minnesota, she was kind of relegated to just 10 fantasy points. I don't see that happening again. But the focus was on the bigs in that last game, so be advised about that. If you want a GPP value, Kaya Stokes is someone to look at 4-2, the former Liberty player. She did play double-digit minutes in 2 of her last 3. They're using her a little bit more. She's a good rebounder, somebody they may need against Minnesota if Cambridge or A'ja gets into foul trouble. So, again, if you're running 10-plus lineups, definitely get some Kaya Stokes ownership. As far as cores go, for you guys on FanDuel, Damiris Dantas at 4-4 is definitely got to be core number 1. And then I would probably say, I'll go off the board a little bit, Jewel Lloyd at 6-6. I think that's really cheap on FanDuel. And then Brittany Griner at 8-5. I'm a big Griner fan here. And then as far as DraftKings goes, the industry is going to be on Stewart. I like to have a different core. It's going to be Brittany Griner, Nafisa Collier, and then Sophie Cunningham, who is just way too cheap. So that wraps up the slate pretty much. There's no prize picks up yet. There's no odds up yet. My article will be out bright and early for you guys. My partner in crime over here is demanding my presence. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam here. He's going to talk about all the soccer stuff coming up. Please give him your undivided attention because he's one of the best in the business, and he will make you money, guaranteed. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Welcome in. Thank you to Walt. I want to just welcome and invite everybody in. I know that, getting WNBA soccer content knowledge, obviously, that's going to really put us ahead of the industry and give us an edge, as these are two sports that are not widely known. There's a lot of niche involved in that and a lot of understanding game script. And like Walt said, in WNBA, it's, about narrative streets. So understanding soccer is more or less about game flow, about the matchup. I'm here to give you guys lots of information. We're going to be covering and focusing on two games. We have a Copa America final between two of the best teams in the world in Argentina and Brazil. And then we're also going to talk about the Euro Championships between England and Italy. And like I said, guys, there's plenty of money out there to be made right now. We have, if you actually want to include the Friday slate, there is a Colombia versus Peru third place game, and that's going to featuring a 5K to first $15 entry GPP on DraftKings. And then on Saturday, we're going to have the Copa America final, and you're going to have a 20K to first. It's a nice prize pool. $15 GPP entry with a lot of contests available to you, doubles, which are cash games, and a lot of other stuff you can get in single entry. So there's plenty to do there. And then, of course, the finale of the Euros on the 11th on Sunday between Italy and England. There is a 100K to first GPP. So that's a lot of money to be made, guys. I want to give you some great content here, give you the opportunity to be able to put in multiple lineups. Obviously, showdown slates on DraftKings, as you may or may not know, they do feature a showdown captain play along with 5 flex plays. So the showdown captain is obviously going to give you 1.5x fantasy points. It's also going to cost you 1.5x salary. So there is a lot of strategy involved in that. Captain plays really differentiate you from the field and from other lineups. But what I do want to talk about is just some general strategy that we have for, soccer. If you have or have not checked out the scoring on soccer, the basic concept on DraftKings is you get a lot of stat accruals. In other words, you get points for crosses, you get points for shots assisted, for shots on goal. All of these things actually going to add up. And so it's going to be a little bit different than, say, at FanDuel, where you're benefiting more from shots, goals, tackles. So it's a little bit different. So on DraftKings, you will see in the article, we're going to have a diagram that's going to come out that I'm going to be putting out for you. It's going to have a key that's going to give you your cash plays, your GPP plays, and most importantly, your set piece takers, which are important on DraftKings because those set piece takers take corner kicks, they take free kicks, and generally a lot of those guys also take penalty kicks. And so what that means is they have more opportunity on dead balls to be able to score points for you and for your lineup. Now, obviously, there's going to be other bonuses that are going to be involved. You get a clean sheet bonus, which means in soccer, if you win the game and you allow 0 goals, or if you just allow 0 goals from the other team, you actually get a bonus. Defenders get a 3-point bonus, and goalkeepers get a 5-point bonus. Goalkeepers also get a 5-point win bonus as well. So you can have as much as a 10-point bonus that's sitting in the bag for you. And then if you get really crafty, put a goalkeeper in the captain position, you're looking at 15 points at the end of the game. That can really, turn some stuff upside down, especially in these big GPPs. So you want to be different here. But let's go and get in and talk a little bit about the slate, what we have. So first of all, the Copa America. Now, I talked about this, some of the best teams in the world. Currently, right now, you have, Brazil coming in as the number 3 ranked FIBA team in the entire world. You got Argentina coming in as the number 8 team. And the Euro qualifiers as 2 top 10 teams also. So these are 2 teams that, they have a lot of players that cross mingle in the club world, where you got obviously Lionel Messi, one of the best players in the world. I know that, if you ask our guys over at YSC, I know our producer, Mickey, he would definitely say that Messi's by far is the best in the world. And of course, you ask some of our other guys and, they're going to have some differences of opinion on there. But on the other side of this game of Argentina, you have Neymar, who is probably one of the also the most well-known players in the world, for maybe different reasons, but from a skill standpoint, he's obviously one of the best. So both of these guys obviously are going to be at the top of the salary, of the fantasy points per game. They're very comparative here. If you're looking at it from a flex position standpoint of pricing, Messi comes in at 12,400. Neymar comes in at 12,000 even. Now, I do expect, obviously, both of these guys to start and play the full game, unless, obviously, injury or whatever happens there. But I will say, just based off of a general strategy, just because you have this specific game, it means so much to them. Lionel Messi has never actually had this opportunity to win a a major championship for the men's team of Argentina. He's came close a lot of times, but for one reason or another, he's fell short of there. Obviously, Brazil's had a ton of success on there as well. Both these guys are going to be playing extremely hard. I think this means a little bit more to Messi than say maybe to Neymar. Neymar, he's not really a title chaser. Messi has a devotion to the game. He's a little bit more cerebral in the fact that he's had a lot of individual successes, but this means a lot to him to win something for the Argentina national team. So obviously, you have to know that going into this, you're going to need to play both these guys in your lineup. And I would highly suggest, especially if you're playing cash games or you're playing one lineup only, that you make either Messi or Neymar the captain of your lineup, because obviously that's going to cost you a lot of salary. But more importantly, you're going to get 1.5 times the amount that they're going to accrue. Now, if we're looking at the road to this specific tournament in Copa America, once the knockout stages hit, you could pretty much say Brazil had a much easier road in a group. If you look at the Argentina side, it was much more difficult. Brazil, they overcame Chile, which 1-0. Then they overcame Peru 1-0, and now they're in the final of the knockout stages from the quarterfinals. Then you go from the Argentinian side. They had to, obviously beat Ecuador 3-0, which wasn't tough, but they had to face the winner of Uruguay and Colombia, which is going to be just an extremely tough matchup no matter who came out of there. They actually went 0-0 Uruguay, Colombia, and then Colombia overcame them 4-2 in penalties at the end of the game. And then it just so happens that Argentina, there was a late Colombian goal, and they wound up being tied 1-1 going into the penalty kicks from there. And then Argentina overcame them, which was actually a pretty dominant performance from their goalkeeper. A lot of good mind games there, 3-2. So, going into this, I have to really say that Brazil hasn't been tested. But however, they have world-class players. Their bench is extremely deep. So whenever you're looking at both of these teams, you have to decide, well, whom I'm going to be playing at. Obviously we know we got Messi. We know we have Neymar here. But I'm going to actually go and give you a different strategy here, that if you're playing both of these guys and one of them at captain, you're going to average between $4,800 and $4,900 left as an average remaining salary per player for this specific showdown. Now, you're looking in and you can see some pretty quality players. And Angel Di Maria is at $10,000. He's probably not going to start. He's going to come off the bench. So I'm just going to take him off the board completely. You're going to see a Richarlison. You're going to see Firmino, and you're going to see a Gabriel Jesus probably in there. They may start Gabby. I'm not really too sure who's going to start for Brazil up front, but one of these guys is going to be up there. However, they're playing Argentina. This is not, Brazil has had trouble scoring a ton of goals the entire tournament. So I don't see there any reason why Argentina is just going to open the door for them to score. Argentina's had great goalkeeper play from Emiliano Martinez, a former Arsenal player. And this guy's, he's just been amazing. Brazil has a ton of great goalkeepers. Obviously, they have Ederson from Man City. They have Alisson from Liverpool as well. I don't know who's going to start. I would say Ederson's probably their number one here. But both of those guys are actually very much in play. We'll get down there in a second, but if you're looking at some of these upper mid-tier guys, we talked about, the Firmino, the Richarlison, Gab Jesus. You can even look at one of the Argentinian attackers. You could possibly get someone in like a Papu Gomez probably won't start. Sergio Aguero probably won't start, but maybe a Nicolas Gonzalez, Rodrigo de Paul, and Lautaro Martinez. He's actually still pretty cheap on here at only 6'4". He scored last game. So he might be kind of the upper tier of what I'm looking at, because I want to put in a lot of good accrual players, someone that's not so GPP up and down, because I feel like it's going to be a 1-0, 1-1 type of game. The good thing about the Copa America, it doesn't jump right into penalties in the final. They actually get a little bit of extra time, and then obviously it goes there. But from DraftKings standpoints, we want to play those wide players. Why? Because they have crosses. They have opportunity for drawing fouls out there. They have opportunity for assisting shots from passes from the outside. So we're looking at players like our fullbacks, Renan Lodi, looking at Acuna, Danilo, Sandro. There's a lot of guys here. Tagliafico, another Argentinian fullback there. Those are guys we're really going to focus in on. And then if we're going to get anybody else, it's going to be some of these midfield players or these center backs that have a lot of ability to be able to move the ball forward. You're going to look at your Otamendi's. You're going to look at your Thiago Silva's, Marquinhos for Brazil. If you can get somebody like a Fred, He's somebody who's a very good midfielder. He's only 4'4". I like him a lot. Paredes for Argentina is only 4'6". So, the biggest thing I want to focus on here is that whenever we're looking at this specific lineup build is that we have to make sure that, we're going to put Neymar and Messi at captain. We're going to play the other one in the flex. So you're not going to have a lot of salary. Now for GPP, if you're playing just specifically to win, I can't tell you that a Messi or a Neymar captain lineup is not going to win, but I do think you have to be a little bit different. You have to play narrative or game script. So in Showdown for Soccer, you have to know that if you think it's a balanced game, it's going to be pretty even. You're probably going to end up with 3 players from each squad. Or you may have 4 players from one squad, 2 from another. Now, if you think it's going to be a complete blowout, you want to have 5 from one and 1 from the other team, because obviously you have to, in the DraftKings build rules, you have to have 1 player from the opposite squad. But I think this is just going to be such a good, competitive, probably better real-life game than a DFS game. You're going to see a lot of slow-moving lines here and there. But the way you nail the GPP is you have to nail the goal scorer. So know that these guys that play towards the front of the formation, closest to the other team on the diagram, in the striker position or one of the wings are usually the guys more likely to score. But if you can nail, say, a set piece player where you may have a Neymar or Messi corner kick and it's going to come into a Marquinhos or an Otamendi, these guys can get a set piece header goal, and that just completely flips lineups upside down. So getting that goal and getting both pieces of the assist and the goal is going to be big. From a penalty standpoint, if any team does give up a penalty, you can expect Neymar or Messi to take that penalty for the other team. So there's not a lot that we have to worry about in regards to game theory there. But like I said, that's pretty much my Copa America take. I don't really want to pick a side right now. If it was, gun to my head and I absolutely had to pick right now, I probably would say Argentina. I think Brazil is an amazing team. I just think that the way that they've played this tournament, they've been playing very, very carefully, very tactical. These 1-0 games are not a usual Brazil. This is not a type of game, and I think that they haven't been tested. Argentina is coming out of some emotional games here, obviously those penalties, but I just think when it's all said and done, Messi can make some amazing things happen. He just has a touch and a class, where he is absolutely world class. So I think that if I had to say, pick a team here, I would say probably Argentina 1-0. But yeah, like I said, so let's move on to the Euros finals game. We will have an article Friday covering the Copa America third place game, one for this Saturday, which will include the diagram. So you'll see cash players, GPP, and of course set piece takers on there as well. But let's move on to the Euros finals game between England and Italy. Now, we did talk about that. There's $100,000 to first place GPP. That's big money on DraftKings. We got another 2 top 10 teams like we talked about in regards to the FIBA World Rankings. You have England coming in at number 4, Italy at number 7. Obviously, this is going to be another game where it's going to be close. Like, you're going to have to really, decide, where you want to be in regards to, more on the England side, more on the Italy side. What I can tell you is watching a lot of this tournament so far, both of these teams have played extremely well. England has looked nearly unstoppable, which is very odd for them. They're usually a letdown, but they've gotten stronger as the tournament goes on. Italy, however, the thing I'll say about Italy is that they've played some, in my opinion, much tougher opponents. They've been managing to, get past some very tough teams, beating Spain, beating Belgium. Belgium's the number 1 ranked FIFA men's soccer team in the world, and they were able to get by them 2-1. Obviously, the Spain game, it came down to penalties. Italy has one of the best goalkeepers in the world in the net in Donnarumma. So I do think this game is going to be extremely close. However, if you're with the betting favorites, I think that England is probably going to get most of the love. Obviously, this final is being played, if I'm continuing to be right on this, it's Wembley Stadium. So with this Euro final being played on their home soil, essentially, it's going to be you're going to have a lot more England exposure, and as far as fans, and now with COVID starting to die down in regards to the live sports world, that makes a big difference in soccer games whenever you have the crowd behind you. So what I will say is, from what I've seen from expected lineups, because we didn't have anything yet, but from what we've seen, if you want to focus in on each one of these teams, the highlight of each team, especially in a game that's close, they don't have a Neymar or a Messi on either team here, okay? So I think England, you're going to have someone like your Mason Mount, Luke Shaw, those are going to be your guys that are going to be the more focal points as far as like a captain, very safe cash play. Mason Mount's usually guaranteed to play close to 90 minutes. He's played 90 or more in each one of his starts so far for the tournament. If you're looking at a Luke Shaw, I'm pretty sure he has played. There was an England blowout against Ukraine. That's the only time he subbed out at the 65th minute, but he's played 90 minutes, and he played all 120 minutes most recently against Denmark whenever they went to extra time, and that Harry Kane penalty that was pretty controversial, but he got by with it. So Mason Mount, Luke Shaw for England are who I'm looking at for as far as like cash builds, cash staples. From the Italian side, I do think Lorenzo Insigne is their best player. He's their playmaker, their number 10. He floats all over the formation, has an extremely high upside. The problem with Italy, though, is their coach, their skipper, he is very, very volatile in regards to his substitutions. He will put people in and they'll play the entire game, and then the next game they're playing amazing, and he'll just sub them out for no reason, maybe because he thinks they look tired or whatever it is, or they just have such a deep bench. So obviously you're going to have to be facing that. That's very, very frustrating when you're playing DFS soccer, is whenever you have someone, especially your captain, sub out earlier than they should. Now, there's going to be subs, of course. You can expect Harry Kane to play the entire game for England. That's just kind of the player that he is. He could sub out if it was a blowout, which I highly doubt that's going to happen. So someone like him is going to be guaranteed a full 90 minutes. But any of these other guys that are up top, Sterling, he usually plays a good amount of the game, but if you're talking about a Jadon Sancho, a Bukayo Saka, I would say that these guys are more likely to sub out. England usually subs out their defensive midfielders, but we don't talk about them too much in regards to DFS plays. But like I said, for me, if I'm looking at Raheem Sterling and from a flex price point at 9.2, and then you have Harry Kane at 10.6, that's a decision to be made for me. I think that I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, okay, well, I feel like both those guys are elite goal scorers in their own right. Sterling provides me a little bit more of a cash-friendly play, whereas Kane is very goal-dependent. If Kane doesn't score, he doesn't score. So, you got to really keep that in mind, is why I always keep him as a GPP play. From the Italian side, I will say that Ciro Immobile, he's one of the best players in Serie A. He's one of the best goal scorers in the world. His substitutions have been very volatile. He's not scored in his last 3 games in the Euros. He did get an assist versus Spain, but against Belgium and against Austria, he did not score. He did score 1 goal against Switzerland and 1 goal against Turkey with an assist. So he's very GPP, probably more volatile than Kane. If England does get any kind of penalties, Harry Kane will take those. If the Italian side does get a penalty, it could be a couple of different people. I would expect it to be Insigne, but it could be one of the midfielders is going to come in. They could have a center back take it. I think the last time they were in penalties, I think they had Locatelli come in and he took the first penalty. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the guy, but I know for England, Harry Kane's going to be the guy. So looking at the rest of the plays for Italy, obviously, I do love Verratti. I love Barella. If Locatelli played, he would be a good play as well. Those midfielders, they make these forward runs for Italy where they're coming from the midfielder and there's hold-up play from the attackers and they allow those runs to come in. So, you don't have to be focused so much on the attacking guys. England plays a more defensive formation. It's usually a 4-2-3-1, where the 3 guys that are behind Harry Kane are usually some kind of a cam or a wing player, but they try to centralize everything. And Italy plays with a little bit more balance, a little bit more wide depth, to where you can have Insigne, or it could be a Domenico Berardi or a Federico Chiesa play on the opposite side. But you can guarantee these guys are usually going to be subbed out between the 60th and the 80th minute, just because the way that Italy plays, they stretch these guys out, they run them all game. So you have to keep in mind that could happen there. Just kind of rounding this out, Jordan Pickford has been very good. England's been very good in regards to not allowing goals. They finally allowed one against Denmark, but even in that game, you got a Jordan Pickford at only 6.4K, still picked up 7.2 points there. I mean, for goalkeepers here, it's kind of the same thing as the other game, is that they're going to see some shots, but you got to remember these are world-class teams that are shooting against them. So whether it's a Donnarumma or it's a Pickford, both of them have the opportunity to score. I don't see a clean sheet in either one of them as far as what their game is going to end up at. Opposite Luke Shaw, whether we get a Kieran Trippier, I would be interested in him. I would be interested in Reece James, which I don't think we'll see us to start. If it's a Kyle Walker, he plays fullback, but he's not a traditional fullback that you want to roster, generally because he does not cross the ball in open play, which is something we need from our fullback players. From the Italian side, you're looking at it could be, well, it's not Spinazzola anymore because he got hurt, but you're going to look and you're going to say it could be let me move down. Emerson and Di Lorenzo started this last game. The Italians play a back four, but three of them always stay back, and there's only one fullback that pushes forward. Emerson does not play defense. He's a Chelsea player. Trust me, I've watched the guy. He does not play any defense at all, but he's somebody that likes to move forward and put crosses in and everything like that. So those are definitely good options from the fullback standpoint, but I think really what we're going to see is kind of similar to the other game where set pieces are really going to make a big difference. If you get this Harry Maguire, or maybe a Chiellini or somebody like that, Bonucci, somebody from a defender or a midfielder that doesn't normally score goals, this feels like a game where they're going to score. Just because this game is going to be so tight, it's going to be one set piece or whatever it is. This game could end up 0-0 and it could go to penalties as well. I could see that happening, but both these teams are extremely deep. If you really want to get different and you really want to play for that $100,000, here's my suggestion and my strategy for you. You're going to have to take a risk and try to play one of the guys that are going to come on as a substitute. I would never recommend that for cash games, but if you want to win $100,000, the lineups that I've seen at the top of these GPPs, either they made the lineup and they forgot to check it and they got lucky, or they made the lineup with the intention of someone coming on. They're going to come on against tired legs. They're going to come on at the end of the game where they're going to be more dominant because their physical stature at that time is just going to be better. They're going to be more fit at that time. So I do think if you want to be different, I'm not saying you captain one of those guys. I'm saying the guys you captain are the ones we're going to play, or they're going to accrue points or whatever. But the substitutes, that could be a Jack Grealish. It could be a Phil Foden. It could be if you don't see if you see Verratti and Barella start, it could be a Locatelli that's going to come on. You could see someone coming from the Italian side, Bernardeschi. He's a great player. He plays for Juventus. He's someone that could come on. He actually came on this last game, played about 13 minutes, but extremely class player. Ciro Immobile. If he goes off, you're going to bring in, one of their other strikers. Someone like that could come on. It's a Belotti, or you could see a Chiesa come on, and they start Berardi, or vice versa. Berardi comes on for Chiesa. Those are going to be the plays that are going to help you win $100,000. So we're going to be able to see some diagrams. We're going to be able to see some good write-ups here. There's a lot of money to be won in DFS soccer. You can see my handle down there at the bottom. You can ask me questions on Twitter. I'm happy to help with that. I'm at YFC Sports V12. Look for me in our free Discord as well. Ask questions there, guys. But yeah, enjoy a great weekend of soccer. I'm so thankful for Walt, obviously Mickey, putting the show together tonight. And, we're going to be available here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the thumbs up to like this. Be sure to subscribe. And if you haven't already checked out our website, there's plenty of opportunities to come in, get some of the best, I personally think it's the best DFS and wagering content in the business for the lowest price in the business. So this is your fielder's choice. My name is Adam, also known as V12. Also Walt, Dub Deuces 85, and of course Mickey behind the scenes producing it. Wishing you guys a great weekend. Cheers to you. Have a good night.